Go ahead, Jan.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jason.
Holly. Thank you. Joan, I am so excited to be here with you today. So for the people who don't know me, Joan, we're going to do as if we don't know everybody. We're going to do some proper introductions, okay? So I am Jan Bassin. I am the founder of the Writers Workshop at the Westport Center for Senior Activities. I am so thrilled that on screen today we have Joan's writing family and Joan's family and her family of friends. This is just, it's very exciting. And all of you, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous Friday afternoon. And we thank you for showing up here on screen, right? To talk on screen rather than being out in the garden. So thank you very much. Jason, thank you so much. Jason is Assistant Program Director at the Westport Center for Senior Activities, and we have Program Director Holly Betts on screen too, Westport Center for Senior Activities. And Jason, thank you for taking this and setting this all up and probably giving up lunch and doing all the other wonderful things you do in service of everybody. So thank you. So Joan, I think we should do what you and I do best, which is chat, which is chat. I want to say Joan is one of our COVID gifts. I call her a COVID gift because the Writers Workshop at the Westport Center for Senior Activities started this August. It'll be 6 years ago. And we were a fully in-person program. Why wouldn't we be? Until COVID hit. And then we scrambled, we got ready, and we started online it was March of 2020, really early on. And Joan and I only realized that we don't know each other in full body, right? The other day, when she handed off a book to me, we feel like we know each other very intimately through story, but this is how we have met for over a year. Really quite incredible. We now have had 6 classes a week on Zoom since March of 2020. And they feel enriching and intimate, right? We've navigated the pandemic together. Joan is amazing. She's absolutely amazing. And everyone in her Wednesday workshop feels that they got a great gift in having Joan participate in our Wednesdays. Joan is a debut author, as you know from this little promo, which I don't know that you would know from reading her book. And I think that's really interesting. I only met her when this book was more than almost finished. Is that correct, Joan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're ready to go.
Ready to go. So, Joan, tell us a little bit about your writing, just you as writer here, because I love when she says, this is nothing I did until this. Talk a little bit about that.
So basically, the story is written for my children, my grandchildren, my nieces, my nephews, because as we all know, we lose our stories. And when you remember talking to your parents, you say, well, I didn't ask enough questions about that. I really don't know. I didn't want my kids and our grandkids to feel that way. So I kind of put it all down. A total labor of love. I never expected to really have a book. I just wrote it as a memoir for the children. So and then it just came in.
So today, for those of you, I mean, most of you know this and have been talking about the Red Velvet Diary. The Red Velvet Diary, Joan's, I call it an autobiographical historical novel. Mm-hmm. And I find it fascinating. I think that I yearn to know which parts she knows in actual detail that happened. It's such a beautiful, beautiful amalgam of fact and fiction, right, from your own life. She's done a lot of historical research and visited many of the spots that her family has inhabited. But in this book, Joan takes us through 3 generations of women in her family. She has her grandmother's story, her mother's story, and her story. And it's all written in the first person from each of these women's experiences. And I had the pleasure of speaking with Joan earlier this morning to make sure we were on the same page about what we would speak about. And I said to her, and I'll say it to all of you, this book was such a treat for me to read in these very broken times that we're living in, because this book takes you through years and years, generations and generations of broken times in different countries, right? Different circumstance, all aided and saved by love, romantic love and love of family. And if it's okay with you, can you tell us a little bit about what made you write this book? What was the inspiration? And I don't want you, I want to be very careful because I don't want you to give away too much that's in the book. I'm always careful with authors because when they start talking, they'll give away too much. Right. But your best cryptic way of talking about your inspiration.
So I think the main thing, the main reason I wrote it is because something very large happened in my life in 2011. And the book starts that way. I'm not giving anything away. My husband was very, very ill. And we went through a long, seemed very long at the time, battle where they told us he would not be waking up. And it was a very painful time and stressful time. And it took me a while to, excuse me, to get to writing the book because I was sort of traumatized from that time. But once I started writing and thinking about my mother and the things that she went through, and my grandmother and the things, every generation in my family has, probably everyone's family, because everyone has a story. But it was, I think you asked me earlier, why did I write it in first person? And I think the reason is because I needed to be in the room at the moment to feel what was going on around me. And every morning I would get up and to decide who I was writing about that day, which woman, I had to become that person, had to really sit here and just channel. I did channel. I know I wrote things that I surprised myself from my mother and my grandmother. It was a very, very wonderful experience for me, which started from trauma and started from a lot of pain.
Right, right. Which I think is the inspiration for a lot of art, is it not?
Yeah.
So Joan started this book 7 years after this medical trauma that she suffered, that her husband suffered and the family suffered. I'm going to skip a little bit forward in our conversation to what we talked about, but I think what's interesting is Joan and I spoke about how age, and this is a senior writers workshop, the only requirement to join our writers workshop is that you have to age in, right? Not age out, you have to age in. You have to be 60 or over. But this is very much the reflective work that someone who has come to a certain age would have, right? Because at 24, I don't think we're thinking exactly about walking in our mother's shoes, right?
No. No. And I have a Red Velvet Diary of my own, which I referred back to.
Joan, so this is fun. So this is what's fascinating, and you'll learn some of this in the book, some of it not. But the Red Velvet Diary speaks of an actual Red Velvet Diary that has been passed down generation to generation in Joan's family. Can you hold that up?
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about this book?
So this diary was written, the dates, I mean, this is all,
hold it up a little higher.
I'll hold up a page because, okay, if you could see that.
Yeah, wow.
It's ancient Greek, and I tried to get it translated, but there's nobody that reads ancient Greek anymore. So this is the kind of thing that was in this whole diary. And I can, you know, it's my grandmother's because the dates, so here's my grandmother, by the way, pictures of her as an older woman. So you can go by the dates, and she started writing it as a young girl, and it just sat in a drawer, but I always kind of opened it when I was a kid and kept it. So it was the inspiration for what might be in here, written by this young woman.
So your mother had this, your grandmother passed and your mother had this.
Yes.
And now you have this. I think it's very interesting. Joan shared that coincidentally, her husband gave her a diary.
He did.
There you go. Hold that up.
Now, let me think now. Yeah, I started this when I first got engaged to him.
So 1969.
1969.
Right. So not knowing that there is a red velvet diary in the family.
No.
He is now gifted with another red velvet diary, which you wrote in sporadically.
Yes.
Over many, many years.
Many years, up until 2011, up until the year he was sick. And lots of it, because I didn't do it on a regular journaling basis, I would maybe skip a year or two and just go back and tell the stories from those past year or two. And when I read it, I said, man, I was writing a book the whole time. So a lot of it came from this, which was a lot of fun.
Right. So how wonderful is that? So that's your own personal history, right? So let's talk a little bit about this so we can whet the appetite for your future readers. So tell us a little bit about who your grandmother, Maria.
So Maria was the daughter of a rabbi, excuse me, and in Turkey. And during a pogrom or a bad time, which was a very young girl, 11 or 12, her parents sent her to Greece, to an orphanage, a school, whatever, basically to protect her from what was going on in their own country, and saying, you go now, we will follow you. When things are better here, we will join you. Which of course they never did, and she never saw her parents again. But she was brought up as a Greek girl in Athens.
And she was brought up as a Greek Orthodox girl.
Greek Orthodox. The fact that she was Jewish was never told until, it's not in the book, but she didn't tell anyone she was, well, she did tell her husband, but her children didn't know until she was on her deathbed.
Right, which is quite incredible. So here is this young child, really, right? Sent and came from, well, you'll learn this in the book, from a home, and sent to now live in what seems like a convent, right? In an orphanage convent.
Yes.
In Greece.
Yes.
And what you will learn in this book is her time there and the life that unfolds there.
Yeah.
She then marries, well, you will learn, and she goes on to have a family of her own, which is where we encounter Lula.
Yes.
Who is Joan's mother.
Yes.
And I don't know, I'm going to hold this up, and I don't know if people on the screen can see this from when you look at the table of contents, which is really interesting. Let's see if Jason can tell me if we can see this properly on screen.
I can see a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So you will see each chapter has a name. Joan, and Joan you can go ahead. You can talk about this a little bit, how you decided how you will encounter the chapters, the names.
Right. So of course, Judy actually brought something to my attention. I think there was some date problems in that table of contents. I never changed Maria's dates. She's always in the same year. But basically, I was born, everybody had a name change as they went along. Maria was born Miriam. I was born Giovanna. Lula was Lula. We all had a name, which at some point in time was changed by our circumstances. And
very, very common with immigrants, right? And
absolutely.
This is something that makes this such a current book. I mean, I had a Miriam grandmother who became Mary when she came here, right? From her shtetl in Russia.
Right.
Yeah, and so there is something so current about this book, Joan. And this, they always say that the names change, and sometimes the clothes change. Sometimes they don't even change, right? The clothes, but again and again, these are stories of then, but they're stories of now, and we see this in what each of these female characters faces.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Major struggles that we feel like we've been through. Everyone has struggles in their life. But when you think about those major struggles that these other generations and people, as you say, are going through today, maybe not our people, but people are going through these same things, breaking up families. And it is a very current theme. I think it's a world theme forever.
And one of the things I thought that this book does, Joan, is it really, it asks us to explore questions of boundaries, and boundaries in countries, boundaries in religions, boundaries in cultures, and what's really at stake for people. And this book keeps coming back to people and love, and generosity and kindness and strength of spirit, right?
Yeah.
And we confront a lot of loss, and then and there's a lot of finding of love here. So in many ways, if I were to say in many ways, this book, the whole book is a love letter, what would you say to that?
I would say so. It is a love letter. It is, it's the conditions and what people go through in their lives, and only really love can help so many things, and you do so many major things for love. I don't know that I just gave in to being in love, but someone like my mom who married someone who was in her country as the enemy, but they loved each other, and she went on to his family and they took her in with love. So it isn't just boy-girl love, but it's love of family. And then how that carried on to her children. And we are such a close family, my siblings and I. It's an incredible, it's a gift to be able to carry it on.
Yeah. And that comes across here, right? That comes across. And who becomes your family in times of trouble? And that's something that this book speaks to as well. Yeah. So I guess I want to ask a couple of writing questions. So one of the questions I have is, so a lot of this you knew, I mean, it's your life, you know, the events of your own life. You knew many of the actual historical events of your mother's life, or at least what moms tell us, right? In families, what gets told to us, which sometimes is accurate and sometimes not so accurate, but you knew very little of your grandmother's life.
Right.
And you once mentioned in some piece of promo, these stories were pieced together at kitchen tables, right? And in whispers, and in family lore. So talk to your audience a little bit about how you went ahead and how you made the choice to write fiction and what you did with that.
Right. So there were enough little stories that we were told about my grandmother. My mother would say, oh, you know, the shawl. I don't have the shawl here, but my grandmother embroidered a shawl, and she would describe it. She did it by moonlight, and she did it, you know, when she was a very young girl, 16. She wanted this little cross, and the little story, which when I sat down at the computer and wanted to write about the story, it somehow, you know, it can't all be fact only because I wasn't there, but it seemed to flow in a natural way. And it was so much fun to be able to be creative with the kind of fiction part of it. It makes me feel like I can write a fiction maybe next time.
Right. You know what? So there is this weaving quality. So we all have, I said this to you earlier, these Swiss cheesy holes in our family history. And I think fiction was such an interesting choice for you to go in and imagine. Imagine the parts you didn't know and fill in those gaps to make it feel full. Right?
Yeah, fun.
and such an authentic way to do it. Now, you did this aided by historical research. So Joan will take you, and in the book, you're going to encounter a little Italian, a little Greek. Is there Russian in here? I think there may have been a word or two. I can't remember. There's certainly foods of all cultures are in here as well. So, right, so that you actually feel that authenticity in culture. And you speak a little bit about how people with different languages speak to each other. And that's something that's integrated into this book.
That was fun because my brothers and sisters and I are fluent in Italian. So that was easy for me to do. Greek, not so much, but yeah, it is fun to think of how people feel in their speech, and that was.
And it makes it that much more authentic. I love, even when I didn't understand, I love that it was there for me to attempt to pronounce in my own head. And it felt really, and so I love that you just brought up, there were touchstone objects that were like your muse, the 2 red velvet diaries. You also had the shawl that Maria took from Turkey to Greece with her.
Yes.
And that's an actual object in your family?
Well, that's an actual object. Okay. The story of Maria from Turkey is the fictional part. She did embroider it as a young girl, and I just said she brought it from her mom. I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
But she had it since she was a young girl, and then it was passed down to my mother.
Right. So we know it's from your grandmother to your mother and to you.
Yes.
Speak a little bit about this. This is fascinating. We only learned this in class with her the other week. Her painter, and talk a little bit about the type of painter your grandfather was.
So my grandfather painted icons in churches. So in all through Greece and through Russia. And this is why I sent him to Russia with his new bride, because I know that he had been there. And I know she traveled with him, as did the children, to wherever he had to work. They often traveled. And it was kind of fun to put them there as a young couple and in love, but that was fictional. But so I don't really know. But he did paint in churches. And then towards his later years, he painted on wood. So my sister, I think my niece has one, and I have one, an icon, and it's saints, and it's, they're very traditional Greek paintings from churches. He was very talented.
Yeah, and Joan and the family has one of these small ancient icons that he painted.
Which I couldn't find today. But.
Right. That's okay. That's okay. We'll get to encounter
and my niece has one too, I believe. My sister's daughter has one too. So there are 2 in our hands.
Right. And so here, in the book, you're taken from really its present moment, 10 years ago, back in time to the early 1900s, before that, right? You travel through Athens, right? So you're in Greece. You're in Russia for a little bit, in Odessa.
Yes.
We are. Say again?
Why not?
Why not? Exactly. Why not? We drink wine in, say the name of the little town in Italy again.
Chianchitelle. Yes.
And then we're here in New York. We even get to be at Vidal Sassoon's in Manhattan for a little bit, right? Right. And we're in New Jersey. So there's a fluidity to this, right? And I found in the book, it was very easy for me. I found myself not even realizing that I was having to make a leap. It was just people and circumstance and love, right? And here I was jumping all over the map and through time. And it became very fluid, Joan. So that was really, I told Joan that this felt a little bit like a tonic for our broken world right now, because encountering the horrors of history we all know about, the Holocaust, falls of government, some actual brutal situations that your family members have faced, physically brutal, situations, death. I mean, we can go on, and yet this is such an uplifting book because the resiliency and the joy, so much joy in the middle of, and this is what was interesting to me, in the devastated city of Athens during this horrific time, and horrors are happening all over the place. There's also coming together and hugging and drinking and patting and movies and
Yes, it's, yeah. And I had to confirm, believe me, Google was my friend. I had to confirm that, yeah, there were movie theaters in Athens in the middle of the war. There wasn't much, but there was outdoor movies, and then there were tavernas and bars that were open, and that the locals would go in, and the Italian soldiers would be there too. So it was an interesting time. It wasn't, obviously it was devastating, but it was a long time. So people melded together.
So your fiction did make me understand how that roundedness of what it felt like to be in the city in a different way, right? And, unlike, and yay fiction, right? Unlike when we see news and we hear this is going on, we assume, there is everyone only in lockdown, maybe. No, that other life is still happening.
Exactly.
And people are coming and going. And, like today, people were facing tremendous food shortages. I mean, right. So all of the issues,
famine.
Right, famine. Okay, so could you speak to this group, many of whom people who are writers on the screen, about what your writing process was like? Once you decided you were actually writing a book, talk to us a little bit about your process.
Okay, so I'm like a dog with a bone when I set my mind to something. But I would get up, my typical morning, get up. I get up early, I don't sleep late, 7 o'clock, make my coffee, and just sit here at my computer and write, whatever. I mean, good or bad, I would just write. And then I would realize 15 minutes later that it's really 12 o'clock noon. So I would have to stop myself, and then, but almost every day, 3 to 4 hours a day. Until I got sick of looking at it, because as you know, when you're a writer, when you go back to look at your work, you change everything and you keep correct. And I did it 50 times. Then I said, okay, I have to just let this go. But I'd say I was dedicated to the project because it made me happy. And there was a lot I wanted to say, and I wanted it to end because I had a reason for it, because it's written for my grandchildren and my children, and my grandchildren each have their copy dedicated to them that's already been given to them, and they'll have it someday. When they feel like reading the whole thing, they'll read it.
This was a 3-year project. 3 years, pretty much most days of the week.
Yeah. Most days, maybe not the weekends, but during the week. Yeah.
So did you allow, here's the personal question, did you allow family to read it while you were writing it?
Yeah. Anybody who wanted to. Google Docs, my sister was reading, both my sisters were reading it. Feedback, yeah, I was fine with it. It's boring for other people to read your work all the time, but my sisters are very good about critiquing, and usually they say, oh, that's so good, so I like that.
We had the benefit in workshop of hearing a number of sections before, right, they went on. And then you decided, once you knew you were done, you hired an editor, private editor. And she went through it for mostly copy editing, I think, right?
Yes.
To make sure, right? Yes. And then, and this book is self-published.
Yes.
So what was that process like?
Actually, it was pretty painless. I have some friends here in town who have gone through this. And my friend Michael, who did 2 books self-published, he gave me his publisher's name. He gave me someone to call, and it was pretty painless. They gave me a price ahead of time, and it was pretty much what I paid. Not terribly expensive. And they did a good job. They did a fine job. They don't edit or anything. They just put out whatever you give them.
Right.
So,
they manufacture the book. So before I go to what I want to talk about next, before we, so I want to make sure we allow time for Q&A. Talk about this beautiful picture on the cover. Tell us the history of this picture.
Well, I took that picture with my iPhone because I went through all the covers that they were suggesting and I didn't care for anything. So we did, well, I set it all up, did the candle and the pearls, which mean nothing. And then Anibal, my son-in-law, I think he's here, he made it look like an old cover, which I was so excited about. So it's really just a photo of this red velvet diary right here. So it's propped up and, with the candle. It's just my photo. It was fun to look at it. I know I even took the picture.
So Joan said to me earlier that writing this book for herself, and it's for the grandchildren, but for yourself also, felt like a prayer. It felt like meditation.
Absolutely. It was a beautiful therapy. If anybody has any inkling or any feeling to write something, everybody's got a story, just do it. It's really, really feels good. I don't know. I mean, I know I channeled those ladies. They were here. They were sitting at the table with me and telling me, this is how I did it. So, and of course it's all in my own head, but
and now it's not. And now it's not.
Yeah,
and now it's not. And now it's not. Now it's in everyone's, right? And so you shared a beautiful way to share them. I said, there's this line here, Joan, in the chapter. Is one of the characters says, I often write to her and I miss her with all my heart. She's speaking of a dear friend. Mm-hmm. She said, but I don't mention private thoughts about my husband because after all, once you write something down, it is like shouting it to the world. Mm-hmm. And that's what you've done. You've just, right? And I said to you also, I said, I think this is a beautiful love letter to writing and art as well, because this book is filled with references to the written word. We have, and I said this to you earlier, right? And I said, I don't know how aware you were of this, because artists, I love when artists do that wonderful art thing, and there's a subconscious level that they're writing, right? But so we have actual love letters written in the book. We hear of them, we hear of notes, we hear of love letters. What else did I say? We have the diary entries. We have an underground newspaper.
Yes.
Being written. And this was fun too. This is great. I asked Joan this earlier. Joan's mother, she writes about her mother. And this is, again, it's a fictionalized book. So this is fiction you're encountering. But she writes as if it's her mother. And I thought this was interesting. I'm a quick study and typing comes easily to me, as do proofreading and editing grammar. The content of the publication is stories written by various reporters, and she goes on. And she talks about this woman, the character of the mother, loves the feeling of her fingers flying over the typewriter. But it was interesting, in conversation with me, Joan mentioned, yep, my fingers just flew over the keyboard. And I said, so you were writing about yourself.
I think I was.
Yeah. But it's funny, the blurring of that.
Yeah, of course.
Such a beautiful part.
Yeah.
Beautiful part of fiction. So I would love to open this up to questions. But I do want to mention a couple of things, because we'd love to hear questions about the process or comments for Joan. But first I want to let you know that these books will be for sale at a discounted price. I think normally if you order on Amazon, it's like $20, but Joan has made available for $16. She will have them at the center, at the senior center. She will autograph them and Jason can help with this, there's something on the senior center website, right, where if you can do cash or a check for $16 made payable to Joan Isaacson. And then you just give us your phone number, Jason, your email.
Who you want it made out to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then who you want the dedication. If you're buying a copy for someone, Joan will autograph them and leave them at the center that it can then be picked up at the senior center, which is really nice. And on the back of the book, if you want to get in touch with Joan, author Joan, Joan tells the story at Gmail. So it's capital JOAN dot capital T tells, capital T the capital S story. So Joan tells the story with initial caps. Joan dot tells the story at Gmail.
Well, I'll send that out when I send out the recording.
Okay.
That sounds terrific. You can get in touch with Joan as well. So Joan, this has been so much fun for me. I have to tell you, it's been my pleasure to get to know you in workshop and watch you stretch your wings as a writer. And I will say, Joan is sort of fearless in writing. Right? She is. You are. You go in and you go almost like, okay, what do I have to lose? I'm just going to try this. So a genre that someone might be reluctant, she's like, I never wrote in that genre. I'm going to try that. And open to really learning and crafting. It's just, you are a joy. And you are a joy in response to other writers. And reading this has been a real pleasure for me and made me feel very hopeful about the world. I just want you to know that's how it made me feel.
Thank you. You are
Great
joy.
job, you guys.
Yeah. So can we open this up to questions? Dick has a question.
Let me just remove spotlight. Give me a second. Remove spotlight. Everybody, if you want to put it in gallery view, you can.
Oh, good.
And if Dick wrote a question real quick. Hi, Joan. Are you thinking about your next book?
Hi, Jason. I've actually started a new book, totally fiction. So I'm about 35 pages in.
Do you want to give us a little teaser about what that's going to be like?
I will tell you. So a woman dies and goes to heaven, and she just assumes she will be let into heaven because she lived a perfect life. And when she gets there, she's turned away, and they said, and she was told, you have to repent for all your sins. And she said, I led a perfect life. And she was told, but you led many other lives. So now you have to go back, bring those lives back to your memory and repent for those sins.
Wow.
So the book will be all the different lives that she will have lived and what her sins were.
Wow, so you're using a lot of the skills you developed in the writing of this book, right?
Yes.
Good for you.
Yes, I'm excited about it.
Deborah had a question, Joan.
Oh, did you ever consider traditional publishing?
I would love to publish traditionally, but I don't even know. Well, I think my friend Jan might help me there.
You know, it's interesting. Joan, I'm going to give Joan so much credit with this because she is a real doer, right? And that sort of, do you know procrastination, Joan? Is that not your thing, really? You don't seem like no.
It's not my thing.
For the rest of us who are plagued by procrastination, but and you know, self-doubt, whatever. But Joan is like, you know what? I want this out. I want my grandchildren to be able to read this now. I want them to actually physically be able to hold something in their hands. So she just said, okay, God, I know how to do this. I know how to do this. And she did. So I don't, you know, I think she would be open to that, right? And would be open. I'm just going to say out loud and to the universe, what happens in this book is the stuff that great movies are made of. I'm just going to say that out loud. It's very cinematic. I'm already like writing screenplays in my head with it. So, yeah.
Who are the actors and actresses going to
Oh, you know, I didn't cast it yet in my head yet, Jason. I haven't cast it yet.
Jason, do you
Dick,
act at all? Do you act? Do you like
I
an
want Dick
actor?
to be in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dick is my favorite Zoom actor. I don't know if you guys know Dick Rao. He is the best Zoom teacher you'll ever meet. He does so many amazing things.
Dick, wave, Dick, wave.
Wave,
He's right there. He is. He's right. He's like, who, me?
Yes, you. Yes, yes.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Great.
By the way, you know, he also, Dick, and we won't get off topic here. This is Joan's fiction moment, but Dick is a botanical artist and quite a renowned botanical artist and scientist who self-published an incredible book that I think is being used for many classes now. That was made available. It's on Amazon, but also at the Senior Center, had a beautiful book signing. So yes, yay workshop. But
If
so
anybody else has questions, if you
more
raise your hand or you can
questions.
unmute yourself. Yes,
Oh,
Susan,
Susan
you gotta
Nelson.
unmute.
Yeah, Susan Nelson, unmute yourself.
Okay, there. I love being in class when Joan reads, because what she writes is just so fantastic and terrific. And the one thing that I think you must do, Joan, is find somebody who can read ancient Greek.
Mm-hmm.
You must find that person who can. There are people out there. I know there are.
I'm sure.
And I think you need to know what your grandmother wrote. The other thing is, you said that your grandfather was this artist who went to churches in Russia and painted these wonderful icons.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting cross-culturally, because he was a rabbi, correct?
No, my grandfather was not he was a priest. First
He
level
was a
priest.
Her
priest.
great-grandfather.
My great
Oh, your great-grandfather.
was the rabbi.
Okay. Well, that's, yeah, wow, that's incredible.
I know.
Anyway,
But
you
Susan,
gotta find that person who reads ancient Greek.
I will look, Susan.
but Susan, you bring up something really interesting here, which I found about this sort of cross-cultural thing. He was Greek Orthodox.
Yes.
Right. And then people were asking, and the rules of Greek Orthodoxy, which I'm speaking really out of my wheelhouse here, but he could be a priest, but he could marry if he didn't take his priesthood to another level, is something I learned in this book. So there were
Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox priests, I think, can marry. I'm not certain.
right.
Up to a certain level.
Up to a certain level.
Yes.
So there were all of these things I learned that, made me really want to go Google things. And that was really very, very interesting.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Any other questions?
Maria has a question.
Yes, Maria, good. And then Sandy's after her.
Hi, Joan.
Is that
Can you
my
hear
little
me?
sister?
Yes, it is. I just want to say how proud I am of my sister to do this for our family. It overjoys me. And her talent is, I wouldn't say shocking. We always knew she was extremely talented. She could do everything. She can paint, she can draw, she can write. She's amazing. But this book meant everything to me. So I want to thank you, Joan. And I cannot wait for your next book.
Thank you. Good to see you here.
Hi, guys. My
So,
nieces are there too. I haven't seen them in a while.
so for those of you would-be writers on screen saying, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? I mean, look at this reception, right? And from family, and what a gift, what an incredible gift this is to your family and to the rest of us, because it helps us to encounter our families. When one person does this, we all have, as Joan said, these family stories. And when one person unlocks their story, it helps others to unlock their family stories. So, yeah, you said there's Sandy who has a comment?
Sandy,
I think the book should be made into a movie. And I think everybody should be the original actors and actresses, because
Imagine.
Joan's family is the most beautiful, from the inside out, people I've met in Connecticut. And I love you. And I'm
Love
so,
you, Sandy. Thank
I
you.
can't wait to finish reading the book.
Thank you.
I love learning about you.
It would make a great series.
Oh, yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah.
I think that's what you do.
Sandy is a fitness instructor on Zoom for the Senior Center as well. She could kick my butt. I know that.
And I worked with Joan's family with from Adam when he was in 3rd grade at Kings Highway, and her daughters and husbands and everybody, and that it was.
All of us. We love
I'm
Sandy.
so blessed to have you in my life. Thank you.
And
We feel blessed
to
too.
have you. Thank you.
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I just want to say I'm super proud, Mom. The book was amazing. I read it in 2 nights. I haven't done that in a long time. I didn't cook. I didn't do anything. I just read your book. I loved it. I
They
do have a
complained to
question.
me about you.
I have a question. Do you have a favorite daughter? And if so, who is that?
So
I was gonna ask the same question.
The
about
answer doesn't
siblings.
count on Zoom. So you can say whatever you want, Joe.
it's not you, Rachel. Listen, you know the answer. These kids have been doing this to me for their entire life. There are no favorites.
There are no favorites.
There
I
are
will tell you, so here's the truth. There really are no favorites because she talks to us when you guys are not here. You know, we hear very particular stories, right? But the love is just immense. And we are all a little envious, by the way, of the pies that you all got in the beginning of COVID. I'm not gonna lie. We're all a little jealous of the pies.
Oh, the pies, the food.
So are there more questions?
Yes, can
yeah,
I
go ahead.
make
Yeah, go ahead, Judith.
a comment to my sister-in-law?
Yes, please do.
Well, I also love and admire Joan probably my whole life since I'm about 14.
Mhm.
And, you know, when you talk about family, we go back. I mean, I was what? Actually, before that, I was about 12 years old when we first met Joan.
Yeah.
And used to go up to Joan's house, and her sister Maria was there. I make fun, but Maria used to talk. Her first words were in Italian. And I just, the book was, even though I didn't know the backstory, but I knew so many, and you know, her mother I loved almost like a second mother. She was just a wonderful, wonderful woman. And it was like peeking into someone's diary. It was strange that, knowing everybody as well as I do, that I still felt like I was invading somebody's privacy. And I just think it's a wonderful tribute to her writing, that you would feel like you were so involved in everything.
Judith, I want to comment on that too, because there is really, you're really very right. There's an intimacy in this book that you're talking about.
Yes.
And here it is, you know the family, but you are being invited in a very intimate way. I mean, there are also intimate wedding nights in here. I just want to whet everyone's appetite in this book, right? In every good, good movie, right? There's some, but there's an intimacy and a tenderness. And yeah, and I think that's really quite lovely. And also sort of speaking to the fact that you're even speaking, there is a blending of families that comes across in this book, right? So by marriage and by association, and even Joan, where a marriage doesn't work out, that character is still back at tables.
Mhm.
You know, the character who supposedly left the family. There is this sort of commitment to love and to honor here. Yeah, so it's really interesting.
There
Barbara
is
Reed's.
just one other comment I
go ahead.
wanted to make, that I'm a little disappointed that Joan didn't give me credit for bringing her and my brother together on
Oh,
their first quote little date.
It's true. Sorry, Judy.
Well,
no, Judy, in the film version, she
In
can
the
work
film
that out.
version,
well,
yeah.
that's
Work
true.
that out.
We'll make sure it's in there.
It's gonna be in the movie.
Yeah, Barbara
Barbara
wants to
Reed,
say
yeah.
something. Go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah, congratulations,
Thank you,
Joan,
Barbara.
and I look forward to reading your book.
Thank you.
In family situations that weren't ideal and were problematic, did you skirt over them, or how did you handle that? Because I have this feeling that that there was just immense love and support. Well, suppose there wasn't immense support and love, how did you were there such situations?
Well,
Or did
It's a good question, Barb.
yeah, it is. I think the story is very much the way our lives were. It really truly is. I mean, I don't know if there were some major family thing or secret, if I would have put it out there. But it wasn't. The story, when it was written and when I finished writing, it was pretty much accurate to the way things were. We were,
You know,
we were a very fortunate family.
But I want to answer Barbara's question in a way. Barbara, so if everything were just peachy keen with everyone all the time, this would not resonate as real, right? Because we all know life isn't like that. So, you know, and I think that it was interesting because this is a work of fiction, and it's important to remember this is a work of fiction, because a lot that happened, Joan invented, right? This is out of her imaginations, how she imagined things could have been in the family. But she has built in difficult situation, like there is a character, it's a minor character in the book, but ends up in what is a very unhappy and abusive marriage, actually, right? It's a minor character in the book, but we know something of, there are some beautiful, perfecty situations, and then there are other situations that are not that and can be actually terribly abusive, where women get stuck in those. And that is part of this book. There are also other situations where people end up in terribly lifeless unions, right? Where there is no, there's not happiness there. In one situation that ends. I mean, so she has built in the novel situations where that it happens in relationship. So
okay,
to answer your question,
thank you.
and I think that's really important when you talk about work.
I had a Carol Anaselmo asked, have you published, I think it's any short stories, or would you think about doing that, Joan?
I would love to publish some things. Yeah, I haven't published anything, you know, officially other than self-published.
Yeah, and
Carol.
yeah, I mean, I think your pieces do lend themselves really well to short stories as well, and to all the writers on the group. You know, there are many, one way towards publication, especially short stories, are contest submissions. And there are many things out there that do not require major submission fees. I think what's most important to look for is your piece consistent with what they're looking for? So, you know, if one were to find, we're really interested in short stories of Greek families who migrate or immigrate to Italy, like Joan has like the perfect short story, you know,
Right.
so really looking for the right spot in contest submissions is great.
All right, we're at an hour. Jan, do you want to wrap it up with Joan? And thank you. I would like, first of all, to thank everybody for coming. Joan was very gracious in coming onto this. I don't think she had ever done anything like this.
No.
So I say you passed with flying colors. Jan, you're an unbelievable moderator, as well as a person and a beer selector.
I know, we have that in
Give
common.
you good beer recommendations if you need it. So yeah, go ahead and wrap it up, Jan, and I'll stop recording after
Yeah,
that.
so before I say something, Joan, you want to say something first?
I just want to thank everyone who joined today for humoring your crazy friend and family, and I really appreciate it. And the book was nothing but a joy for me to write. There was nothing I can say, and I'm ready to go in there and do it again. So look for more. And thank you. And Jan, you are an angel to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
You're an angel too.
Thank you. I'm so excited to read your book. I'm going to finish it this weekend. Thank you.
And I will say that I had the same experience as her daughter. When you take on a lot of things and you say, but you know, when I commit to talking to someone about a book, I read the whole book. I don't not, and I had heard sections of it before. And I mean, many, and it had parts, and I've had it in my house for a little, read parts. But when I started cover to cover, I couldn't put it down. I needed to know what happened. I needed to know where people ended up. I mean, I knew, as if I were reading Joan's real family, and I knew it was fiction. So I knew a lot of this was up, but I needed to know in the way you need to know about someone you know. And this was my pleasure. Thank you, Senior Center, for doing this, for making this possible. Thank you very much. I think this is such a wonderful thing for our community, of writers, our local community, people from far away to come together. And this is the power of the written word, everyone. This is the power. So I want to thank everyone, all of you. You are my joy, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Bye-bye.